What if I told you there's a simple ECU flash that can unlock surprisingly large power gains on your bike in under an hour? But here's the catch. It's completely illegal in most places and can get your bike impounded if you're caught. Yeah, these modifications come with federal and state penalties that can cost you thousands. Today I'm breaking down several illegal motorcycle modifications that riders are using to get massive performance gains. We're talking about the stuff the manufacturers sure don't want you to know about, the government definitely doesn't want you doing. By the end, you'll know if these mods are worth it or just a legal disaster waiting to happen. But first, let's talk about how riders even get started down this path. Most riders don't exactly wake up one morning and think, oh, hey, I'm just going to build an illegal street bike. It starts with something that seems completely innocent. Maybe you're scrolling through Instagram and see this sick-sounding Akrapovich slip-on exhaust. Sounds harmless, right? Hey, just a little extra noise, maybe some extra power. You install that slip-on, and suddenly your bike sounds like a proper machine instead of a vacuum cleaner. The performance bump is tiny, but it's there. Your buddies comment on how good it sounds. Random people at gas stations ask about your exhaust. You're hooked on that attention. You get that tiny taste of extra power, and that's when the real trouble starts. Next thing you know, you're looking at ECU flashes. The tuner tells you about all the extra power hiding in your bike's computer. Hey, just a small flash and boom, noticeably more power. Still not technically illegal in most places, but you're definitely in gray area territory now. Your bike is faster. You can feel the difference every time you twist the throttle. That's when the addiction really kicks in. You start hanging out on forums and Facebook groups. Everyone's posting dyno sheets talking about their latest mods. Someone posts a video of their R1 with a full system and ECU flash pulling on a stock Hayabusa. You're looking at the comments, they're full of guys sharing their setups and power numbers. You realize your bike is making maybe 20 extra horsepower, while these guys are pushing 50 to 70 over stock. The worst part is how normal it all seems in these communities. Everyone talks about removing cats and flashing ECUs like it's no big deal. Someone mentions they got pulled over and the cop didn't even notice their full exhaust system. Another guy posts about passing inspection with illegal modifications. The social pressure, it's real. You start feeling like your bike is slow and boring compared to everyone else's. That's when you start researching the serious stuff. Full exhaust systems that dump the catalytic converter completely, ECU flashes that remove speed limiters and rev limiters, aftermarket ECUs that let you run any configuration you want. Each modification seems like a logical next step from where you are. I know a guy who started with a simple slip-on his ZX-10R. 2 years later, he had a full Akrapovich system, aftermarket ECU, Sprint air filter, and was running race fuel. His bike was making over 200 horsepower and was completely illegal for street use. He didn't plan it that way. Each modification just kind of led to the next one. The community aspect makes it worse. You see guys posting videos of their builds on YouTube and TikTok, track day videos where everyone is running completely illegal setups. Nobody talks about the legal risks. It's all about the power gains and the sound clips. But there's a point of no return. When the next mod isn't a tweak, but a full ECU swap, that's where the real risks start. I mean, you know what really gets people in trouble? The aftermarket ECU swap. Companies like Woolwich and Bazaz make standalone engine management systems that replace your stock ECU entirely. These kind of units can run any configuration you want. No speed limiters, no rev limiters, no emissions controls. They're marketed as race-only products, but come on, everyone knows where they really end up. The moment you install one of these systems, your bike becomes track-only. Legally speaking, your registration becomes invalid, your insurance becomes void, but the performance gains are massive. We're talking about 40 to 60 horsepower increases, depending on your bike and setup. That's supercar power gains territory. But here's what nobody tells you about these gateway modifications. Each one makes the next one seem reasonable. The power gains are addictive. The community pressure is real, and before you know it, you're riding a completely illegal machine on public roads. The progression from legal to illegal, it can happen so gradually that most riders don't realize they've crossed the line until it's too late. But those ECU swaps are just the beginning. There are modifications out there that make those power gains look like nothing. A turbo kit installation will add significant horsepower to most leader bikes, but it also guarantees your bike becomes completely illegal for street use. The moment you bolt on that turbo, you've crossed into federal territory. We're not talking about state fines anymore. This is EPA violation territory. And you're looking at penalties that can reach the high thousands. The crazy part, man, is how easy these modifications are to get. You can order a complete turbo kit for an R1 or a GSXR online right now. Companies market them as race-only products, but everyone knows where they really end up. You know, the underground market for these components is massive, and it's growing every year. ECU flashes that remove speed limiters are probably the most common big power modification. Your stock ZX10R is limited to 186 mph from the factory. That's a gentleman's agreement between manufacturers, but with a simple ECU flash, you can remove that limiter completely. Suddenly your bike will pull to its natural top speed, which is usually around 200 to 220 miles per hour, depending on gearing and aerodynamics. Now, that being said, the performance gains from removing rev limiters are even more dramatic. Like stock bikes are limited to around 14,000 RPM to protect the engine. But remove that limiter and most modern sport bikes will rev to 16,000, even 17,000 RPM. That's where the real power lives. You're talking about 20 to 30 extra horsepower just from spinning the engine faster. Nitrous oxide systems, this is where things get really wild. A wet nitrous kit can add 50 to 70 horsepower instantly. I'm talking about button-activated missile mode. The NOS cheater system is popular because it's completely hidden. Bottle mounts inside the tail section, and the injection nozzles are tiny. From the outside, your bike looks completely stock. All right, so here's a real example, just to show you what we're dealing with. A stock ZX10R makes about 197 horsepower at the wheel. Add a full exhaust system and ECU flash, and you're at 210 horsepower. Install a turbo kit, and you're pushing 280 horsepower. That's a 42% increase in power. Your bike is now faster than most supercars. But keep in mind, the enforcement methods are getting more sophisticated every year. Cops are starting to carry sound meters to check exhaust noise levels. Some states are piloting roadside emissions vans and using OBD scanners to spot ECU tampering. The days of flying under the radar are ending fast. California's emissions rules can lead to impoundment and steep fines. Repeat offenders are risking permanent forfeiture. The fine structure is brutal, and it escalates quickly with each violation. I mean, some riders have literally watched their bikes get crushed into cubes. Race-only components are the biggest legal trap. Companies sell these parts with huge disclaimers about off-road use only, but they know exactly where these parts end up. The Bazaz Z5 fuel controller is technically a race-only product. So is the Woolwich Racing ECU, but you can find them on street bikes at any track day. The underground market works through private Facebook groups and forums. Someone posts about wanting a specific modification, gets private messages with contact information. Cash transactions, no paper trail, no warranty. It's like buying drugs, but for motorcycle parts. And the network is massive, man, and it operates in every major city. Turbo kits represent the ultimate big power modification. A Garrett GT2860RS turbo system will transform any leader bike into an absolute monster. We're talking about 300 plus horsepower potential. But the legal penalties are severe. Federal EPA violations can result in massive fines per violation. That's more than most people's bikes are worth. The worst part is how normalized these modifications have become in certain communities. Track day groups where everyone's running illegal setups, motorcycle forums where people share dyno sheets and power numbers, social media groups just dedicated to talking about these modifications. The peer pressure to keep up with power numbers, it's real. Law enforcement agencies are starting to work with EPA and DOT to crack down on these modifications. They're sharing databases of known violators. Insurance companies are starting to deny claims for modified bikes. The legal net is tightening around these big power modifications. The single modification that gives the biggest horsepower increase, while also carrying the steepest legal penalties, is a standalone ECU swap combined with a turbo kit. Now, this combination can add 100 plus horsepower, but violates multiple federal laws simultaneously. It's also the modification that creates the biggest divide in the motorcycle community. But nothing splits riders down the middle quite like one particular modification that turns every discussion into an all-out war. Speed limiter removal is the one modification that turns motorcycle forums into absolute war zones. You mention ECU flashes that remove speed limiters, and watch the comments section explode. Half the riders think you're an irresponsible maniac. The other half think you're finally unlocking your bike's true potential. The philosophical divide runs deep in the motorcycle community. You got the safety crowd who believes speed limiters exist for good reasons. You know, these kind of riders point out accident statistics, public perception issues. They'll argue that removing safety systems makes all motorcyclists look bad. But then you got the performance enthusiasts who think speed limiters are government overreach. They believe riders should have the freedom to modify their own property. The pro-modification crowd makes some compelling arguments. You know, they point out that speed limiters are artificial restrictions that don't exist on cars. A Dodge Hellcat can do 203 mph from the factory, but their R1 is limited to 186 mph. That seems backwards when you think about it. These riders argue that track day use justifies the modification. Why should they be limited to 186 miles per hour when they're paying to use a racetrack? Track day instructors tend to be split down the middle on this issue. Some organizations require speed limiters to be functional for safety reasons, but others allow unlimited bikes in advanced groups. The inconsistency of all this creates confusion and heated debates. Riders get frustrated when they can't use their expensive track bikes at certain events. Then the safety advocates fight back with crash statistics and insurance data. They point out that higher speeds mean more severe crashes, medical costs go up, insurance premiums increase for everyone. These riders worry about government crackdowns on the entire motorcycle industry. They think irresponsible modifications will lead to more restrictions for all riders. And yeah, forum discussions about speed limiter removal get nasty fast. The moderators usually have to lock threads because people can't stay civil. You'll see comments like Darwin Award candidates flying back and forth. The personal attacks get brutal. People question each other's riding ability and even intelligence over a simple ECU modification. Social media obviously makes the divide worse. YouTube videos of bikes doing 200 plus miles per hour get millions of views. The comment sections become battlegrounds. Instagram posts about ECU flashes generate hundreds of heated responses. TikTok videos of speed runs get viral drama going. The algorithm keeps feeding people content that reinforces their existing beliefs. Now, some insurers have started pushing back on modified ECUs, making coverage harder to get. Others are raising premiums for owners of high-performance bikes. The insurance industry sees speed limiter removal as increasing risk, and they're adjusting policies accordingly. This sure pisses off riders who think they're being unfairly targeted. Manufacturers are caught in the middle of this community split. Take Yamaha with the R1. They advertise its track capabilities while warning against ECU modifications. It's this mixed messaging that creates confusion about what riders should actually do with their bikes. The dealership network reflects this community divide because some dealers quietly recommend tuning shops that will remove speed limiters, Others refuse to work on modified bikes. Sales staff get trained to avoid discussing illegal modifications. Service departments develop unofficial policies about what they will and won't touch. Law enforcement agencies are starting to pick sides too, you better believe it. Some departments focus on noise violations and visible modifications. Others are targeting speed limiter removal specifically. The inconsistent enforcement creates more confusion and resentment. Riders feel like they're being randomly targeted based on where they live. And the racing community adds a whole other layer to this debate. Professional racers run unlimited bikes, but they're on closed courses with safety crews. Track day riders want the same freedom, but they are paying customers at private events. The distinction between professional racing and amateur track use gets blurred. ECU flashes that remove speed limiters represent the most divisive modification in the motorcycle community. It's perfectly legal in some places and completely illegal in others. The performance benefits are real, but the safety concerns are also valid. The community can't agree on whether this modification helps or hurts the sport. And the anger and division over speed limiter removal shows how passionate riders can get about their bikes. But it also reveals deeper questions about freedom, responsibility, and regulation. These philosophical differences explain why this one modification creates such heated arguments. That heated debate shows why we need a clear cost-benefit framework. So let's put real numbers to these mods. Here's what happens when you crunch the actual numbers on illegal modifications. Spending $3,000 on forbidden mods can easily balloon into $15,000 in total costs when reality hits. Most riders get tunnel vision on horsepower gains and completely ignore the financial nightmare they're walking into. All told, you can easily spend $5,000 plus just to go illegal, not counting maintenance or dyno time. A full race exhaust runs $1,000 to $3,000, depending on your bike. An ECU tune adds another $800 to $1,500. Throw in installation and dyno time and you're already deep in the hole before the real costs start hitting. The three biggest financial traps will destroy your bank account. First is insurance voids. Your insurance company discovers the modifications during a claim and denies coverage completely. Now you're looking at $12,000 to $20,000 in damages coming straight out of your pocket. Your warranty gets voided too, so any engine problems become your financial responsibility. A blown motor on a liter bike costs $8,000 to $12,000 to rebuild. Second trap is impound fees. California impounds bikes for exhaust violations and charges $150 per day of storage. The average impound period is 30 days, which means $4,500 in storage costs alone. Add towing fees, administrative costs, you're looking at $5,000 to $6,000 total. Some riders never get their bikes back because the fees exceed the bike's value. Third trap is the fines themselves. Getting caught with illegal modifications triggers federal EPA violations. The fines start at $2,500 for first-time offenders, but can reach $37,500 for repeat violations. You need a lawyer who specializes in EPA violations, and they charge $300 to $500 per hour. A simple case costs $5,000 to $10,000 in legal fees, even if you win. Here's a real case study that shows you what we're dealing with. A rider in Los Angeles spent $6,000 on illegal modifications to his R1. The bike made 45 extra horsepower and sounded incredible. 6 months later, he got pulled over for noise violations. The cop used a sound meter and wrote him a $1,500 ticket. His bike got impounded for 30 days, costing another $4,500. His insurance company discovered the modifications, dropped his coverage. Total cost of those modifications ended up being $12,000, plus he lost his insurance. The enforcement rates are higher than most people think. Sound enforcement cameras are being installed in major cities. These systems automatically issue tickets for bikes exceeding noise limits. The fine is typically $220 to $1,000 per hit, and some riders get multiple tickets in a single day because they pass multiple cameras. Now ask yourself, are those extra horses worth risking your coverage and tens of thousands in bills? The performance gains need some context too. That extra 50 horsepower sounds impressive, but when can you actually use it? Most illegal modifications only provide benefits at high RPM and wide open throttle. Street riding rarely involves sustained high RPM operation. You're paying thousands for performance you can't legally use on public roads. Now the real kicker is depreciation. Illegal modifications destroy resale value. Buyers know they're taking on legal liability. Banks won't finance modified bikes. You might spend $5,000 on modifications and lose $8,000 in resale value. The total financial impact is negative $3,000, and that's before considering any legal costs. Insurance complications extend beyond just voided policies, by the way. Some companies maintain databases of riders who've been caught with illegal modifications. Getting coverage after a violation can be impossible with standard insurers. You end up paying specialty insurers who, let's be real, charge 200% to 300% higher premiums. The enforcement technology, it keeps getting better every year. Automated systems can detect modified exhaust sounds. Some states are experimenting with roadside emissions testing equipment. OBD scanners reveal ECU mods instantly. The chances of getting caught are increasing constantly. What makes these modifications so irresistible despite the brutal financial reality? Simple human psychology. We want what we can't have. The forbidden nature makes them more appealing. The performance gains are real and addictive. The community pressure is intense, but when you run the actual numbers, the math is absolutely devastating. So where does that leave you as a rider? Well, here's the harsh truth about illegal motorcycle modifications. They are financial disasters waiting to happen. The performance gains are real, but the costs are brutal. You're risking your bike, your insurance, and thousands in legal fees for horsepower you can't legally use on public roads. Remember, power versus penalties. If you can't cover fines, impounds, and insurance hits, stick to legal upgrades. At the end of the day, you need to make responsible decisions about your bike. The community pressure is real, but the consequences are yours alone. Tell me your biggest mod regrets or triumphs in the comments. Let's get a real discussion going. Drop a comment about your experiences with these modifications. Have you been tempted by illegal mods? What's holding you back? Will future regulations kill motorcycle performance culture completely? If you found this breakdown helpful, hit subscribe for more no BS motorcycle insights.